A 5-year-old boy ran barefoot through the darkness to a gas station, his face covered in tears and dirt. When he saw a group of bikers, he screamed the words that would change everything. "Please save my family!" What they found when they followed him broke everyone's heart, but no one imagined what would come next. If this story touches your heart, please like this video and comment below. Your support means the world to us. The Red Rock gas station sat on Highway 89 in northern Montana, 20 miles from the nearest town. It was one of those places that existed purely out of necessity, a lonely island of fluorescent light in an ocean of darkness and pine trees. At 11:47 p.m. on a cold October night, the station was nearly empty, except for a tired clerk behind bulletproof glass and 6 motorcycles parked near the pumps. The Thunder Ridge Riders had been on the road for 14 hours, heading back from a Veterans Memorial rally in Spokane. They were all in their 50s and 60s, men who'd served their country, buried their brothers, and found solace in the rumble of engines and the bond of the open road. Their leader was Thomas Bear McAllister, 62 years old, a former Marine with a gray beard down to his chest and eyes that had seen too much. Bear stood by his Harley, stretching his back and feeling every one of his 62 years. Beside him, his brothers filled their tanks. Snake, a Vietnam vet with a prosthetic left leg. Tiny, who was anything but tiny at 6'5". Doc, a retired Army medic. Hammer, built like a tank with hands that could crush steel. And Preacher, who'd actually been a chaplain before he found the Brotherhood of the road. 20 more miles to Murphy's Lodge, Snake said, screwing his gas cap back on. "I'm getting too old for these long hauls, Bear." "You say that every ride," Bear replied with a slight smile. "And yet here you are. Glutton for punishment," Snake muttered. That's when they heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the quiet Montana night. A child crying. Not the tantrum cry of a kid who wanted candy, but the desperate, terrified sobbing of someone in real trouble. Every head turned toward the darkness beyond the gas station lights. At first, they saw nothing. Then, emerging from the tree line like a ghost, a small figure stumbled into the light. A little boy. He couldn't have been more than 5 years old. He wore pajamas. Thin, torn pajamas with cartoon dinosaurs on them, completely inadequate for the October cold. His feet were bare and bleeding from running through the forest. His face was covered in dirt and tears, and his eyes were wide with terror. But what froze Bear's blood was the bruise on the boy's cheek. Dark purple, the unmistakable mark of an adult's hand. The child stumbled toward them, gasping for breath, and when he saw the 6 large men in leather vests, he didn't run away. He ran toward them. "Please!" the boy screamed, his voice raw and desperate. "Please help! Please save my family!" He collapsed at Bear's feet, tiny hands clutching at the leather of Bear's vest, looking up with eyes that held more pain and fear than any child should ever know. Bear dropped to one knee, his massive frame suddenly gentle. "Easy, son. Easy now, we got you. You're safe." "No!" the boy screamed. "Not safe! Mama's not safe! Baby sister's not safe! He's gonna hurt them! He said he's gonna kill them this time! Please, you have to help!" The other riders gathered around, their faces hard with the kind of anger that came from seeing a child in distress. Doc knelt beside Bear, his medic training kicking in automatically. He gently examined the boy's feet, his face tightening at the cuts and scratches. "Son," Doc said softly, "what's your name?" Jake," the boy stuttered through his sobs. "Jake Morrison. Please, we don't have time. He's hurting Mama." He locked me outside and said if I came back he'd kill me too, but I can't leave them. I can't. Bear felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. He'd seen a lot in his 62 years. War, death, cruelty in 100 different forms. But there was something about a child's terror that cut through all the calluses he'd built around his heart. "Jake," Bear said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "Who's hurting your mama?" Ray Dobson. He's my stepdad, but he's not really my dad. He gets real mean when he drinks. Tonight he came home and he was so angry and he hit Mama and she fell down and the baby started crying and he said he was tired of all of us and..." The words tumbled out in a rush, barely coherent through the crying. "Where is this happening, Jake?" Bear asked. "Where's your home?" Jake pointed with a shaking hand toward the darkness beyond the gas station. "Up the old logging road. 3 miles, maybe? In the cabin. The one with the blue door. Please, we have to go now. He's gonna hurt them." Bear looked up at his brothers. He didn't need to say anything. The decision was written on every face. They'd all seen this before in one form or another. Domestic violence, abusive situations, people trapped with nowhere to turn. Most people would call the cops and wait, But they were 20 miles from town, and by the time police arrived, it might be too late. Tiny, call 911, Bear ordered. Give them the location. Tell them possible domestic violence, woman and infant in danger. He looked back at Jake. But we're not waiting for them, son. We're going now. Snake was already on his phone, pulling up a map. Old logging road 3 miles in. I see it. Looks like it dead ends at a property marked as private. Mount up, Bear said. He looked at Doc. You stay here with Jake. Keep him safe. Keep him warm. Wait for the police. No! Jake grabbed Bear's vest again, his small fingers surprisingly strong. I have to show you. There's 2 roads that look the same, and if you take the wrong one, you'll get lost and Mama doesn't have time. Please, I'll show you. Bear hesitated. Everything in him said to leave the child in safety. But the kid was right. They didn't know these woods, didn't know which cabin, and every minute counted. Doc, you ride with me. Jake rides between us. We keep him safe. Bear's voice left no room for argument. They moved with military precision, years of riding together making them operate like a single unit. Bear lifted Jake onto his bike, settling the tiny boy in front of him. Doc climbed on behind, creating a protective cage around the child with their bodies. Bear shrugged off his leather jacket and wrapped it around Jake, swallowing the boy's small frame. Hold on tight to the handlebars, Jake, Bear said, and you tell me exactly where to go. Can you do that? Jake nodded, his tears still flowing but his jaw set with determination. Yes, sir. That's a brave boy, Bear said. They roared out of the gas station, 6 Harleys cutting through the night like avenging angels. The cold air bit at their faces, but Bear barely felt it. His mind was in mission mode, the same state he'd entered dozens of times in combat zones where fear took a backseat to purpose. Jake pointed to a nearly invisible turnoff, a dirt road barely distinguishable from the forest around it. There! That one! Bear led them onto the logging road, which was more like a path, rutted, overgrown, clearly unused for years. Tree branches scraped at them as they rode, the headlights barely penetrating the thick darkness. 3 miles felt like 30 as they wound deeper into the forest. There! Jake's small voice cut through the engine noise. The cabin with the blue door, that's it! Bear saw it. A ramshackle cabin that looked like it had been built in the 50s and barely maintained since. Light glowed from behind curtained windows. A beat-up pickup truck sat in the dirt driveway, and even over the rumble of their engines they could hear shouting. A man's voice, loud and angry and slurred with alcohol. Bear killed his engine 50 yards from the cabin, signaling the others to do the same. They dismounted silently, and Bear lifted Jake down, passing him to Doc. You stay here with Doc, Bear said firmly. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay right here. Understand? You're gonna save them, right? Jake's voice was small and scared. You're gonna save Mama and Rosie? On my life, son, Bear said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. He turned to his brothers. They stood in a semicircle, their faces hard in the darkness. These weren't young men looking for a fight. These were old warriors who'd learned long ago that violence was sometimes necessary to stop worse violence. Snake, Hammer, you take the back. Make sure nobody runs. Preacher Tiny, you're with me on the front. We go in fast. We secure the situation. We protect the woman and baby. If this Ray Dobson is as drunk and violent as Jake says, he's not going to come quietly. We do what we have to do. They nodded. No questions. No hesitation. They'd all sworn oaths at different times in their lives to protect and defend, to stand between the innocent and harm. Tonight was just another battlefield. Bear approached the cabin, his boots silent despite his size. The shouting inside was getting louder. A woman's voice crying, begging, a baby screaming, and a man's voice full of rage and threats. I'm sick of you! Sick of these kids! Sick of this whole goddamn life! Ray Dobson's voice was thick with alcohol and fury. Maybe I should just end it all right now. Save us all the trouble. Please, Ray, please. The woman's voice was desperate. Just calm down, please. You're scaring Rosie. Scaring her? Scaring her? I'll give you something to be scared of. The sound of breaking glass. A woman's scream. A baby's wail reaching a pitch of pure terror. Bear didn't wait anymore. He nodded to Tiny, and the big man's size 14 boot connected with the door, sending it crashing inward with a sound like a gunshot. They poured into the cabin, Bear first, Preacher and Tiny right behind him. The scene inside made Bear's blood run cold. The cabin was small, dirty, and smelled of beer and decay. In the center of the main room stood Ray Dobson, a man in his 40s with wild eyes and alcohol sweat on his face. He held a woman by her hair with one hand. Jake's mother, maybe 30 years old, with a black eye and blood running from her nose. In his other hand, Ray held a hunting knife, the blade pressed against the woman's throat. In a playpen in the corner, a baby, couldn't have been more than 1 year old, screamed and cried, her face red and terrified. Ray's eyes went wide with shock when the bikers burst in, but shock quickly turned to rage. "Who the fuck are you? Get out of my house. This is my family, my business." "Not anymore," Bear said, his voice deadly calm. He took one step forward, his hands visible and empty, but his presence filling the room like a physical force. "Let the woman go, Ray. Let her go, and we can talk about this." "Talk?" Ray laughed, a wild, hysterical sound. "You're on my property. I could kill all of you. This is my wife, my house. You got no right." "She's not property," Preacher said quietly from Bear's left. "And that knife near her throat? That's a crime. Multiple crimes, actually." Behind the cabin, Bear heard the back door open, Snake and Hammer securing the rear exit. Ray Dobson's grip tightened on the woman's hair, making her cry out in pain. The knife pressed closer to her throat, drawing a thin line of blood. "You take one more step and I swear to God I'll cut her. I'll do it. Don't think I won't." Bear could see it in Ray's eyes. The man was drunk, desperate, and dangerous. But Bear had dealt with dangerous men before. In Fallujah, in Kabul, in back alleys and prison yards. He knew the dance. "Ray," Bear said, his voice dropping to something almost conversational. "I'm gonna tell you something true. You hurt that woman, and you don't walk out of this cabin. Not on your feet. Maybe not at all. Now, I know you're angry. I know you're drunk. I know whatever's going on in your life has you feeling like there's no way out, but hurting them? That's not the answer." "You don't know nothing about my life," Ray screamed. "Nothing! I work like a dog and come home to this, to screaming kids and a woman who won't shut up. I deserve better than this." The woman, Jake's mother, was trembling so hard Bear could see it from across the room. Her eyes were wide with terror, but also with something else. Shame. The kind of shame that came from being beaten down so many times you started believing you deserved it. "What's your name, ma'am?" Bear asked, his eyes never leaving Ray, but his voice directed at her. Carol, she whispered. "Carol Morrison. Carol, I need you to stay very still. Can you do that for me?" She nodded fractionally, afraid even that small movement might set Ray off. Bear took another small step forward. "Ray, I'm going to tell you what's about to happen. In about 3 minutes, the Montana State Police are going to come up that logging road. They're going to see 6 bikers, 1 terrified woman with a knife to her throat, and a baby screaming in a playpen. And they're going to have to make a decision real fast. Now, you can make this easy or hard. Easy is you put down the knife, let Carol go, and we all wait for the cops to sort this out. Hard is you force me to take that knife from you." "You can't," Ray said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. "You try and I'll cut her. I swear I will." "You won't," Bear said flatly, "because I'm faster than you think, and you're drunker than you realize. I've disarmed better men than you with both hands tied behind my back. You're out of your depth, Ray, way out." Behind Ray, through the kitchen, Bear saw Snake appear silently in the doorway. The Vietnam vet moved like a ghost despite his prosthetic leg. He caught Bear's eye and nodded once. "Last chance, Ray," Bear said. "Put down the knife." "Fuck you!" Ray screamed, and his arm moved. Whether to actually cut Carol or just threaten, Bear would never know, because Snake moved. Fast as lightning, the old vet grabbed Ray's knife hand from behind, twisting it away from Carol's throat with the kind of precision that came from decades of combat training. Ray screamed in pain and surprise, his grip on Carol's hair releasing as he tried to spin toward this new threat. That's when Bear moved. 3 steps. That's all it took to cross the room. His fist connected with Ray's jaw with the full force of 62 years of controlled rage behind it. Ray dropped like a stone, unconscious before he hit the floor, the knife clattering away across the dirty linoleum. Carol collapsed, and Preacher caught her before she hit the ground. He lowered her gently to the floor, checking her injuries with practiced care. "You're okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore." Tiny had already moved to the playpen, lifting the screaming baby out with surprisingly gentle hands for such a massive man. "Hey there, little one," he murmured. "Hey there. You're okay. Everything's okay now." The baby, Rosie, clutched at Tiny's leather vest, her screams turning to hiccuping sobs as she felt the safety of his arms. Bear knelt beside Carol. Up close, he could see the full extent of the damage, multiple bruises in various stages of healing, the fresh black eye, the cut on her throat, and worst of all, the look in her eyes. The look of someone who'd given up hope long ago. "Carol," Bear said gently, "is there anyone else in the house? Just you, Ray, and the baby?" "And Jake," she whispered. Then panic flooded her face. "Jake! Oh God, where's Jake? Ray locked him outside hours ago, and it's so cold, and—" "Jake's safe," Bear said firmly. "He found us at the gas station. Brave kid. He led us here to save you. He's outside with our friend Doc right now." Tears flooded Carol's eyes. Not tears of fear this time, but relief so profound it seemed to break something loose inside her. "He's alive? He's really okay?" "He's a hero," Bear said. "That little boy ran 3 miles through the forest in the dark, barefoot, to get help for his mama. He loves you something fierce." Carol started sobbing, deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they'd been locked inside for years. Preacher wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and just held her, letting her cry. On the floor, Ray groaned and started to stir. Hammer, all 300 pounds of him, placed one boot on Ray's chest. "I wouldn't move if I were you," he said conversationally. "We're all waiting real patient for the police to arrive." Bear stood and walked to the door. "Doc, bring Jake." A moment later, Doc appeared with Jake clutched in his arms. The little boy's eyes went wide when he saw inside the cabin, saw his mother alive and his sister safe. "Mama!" Jake squirmed out of Doc's arms and ran to Carol, throwing himself into her embrace. Carol grabbed her son like he was a life raft in a stormy sea. Holding him so tight, Bear thought she might never let go. "My baby," she sobbed. "My brave, brave baby." "I got help, Mama," Jake said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "I got the bikers to help, just like you always said. You said if I was ever in real trouble, find someone strong and brave and ask for help. So I did." Bear felt something crack in his chest. This woman, even in the midst of abuse and terror, had taught her son to seek help, had given him the tools to save them all. In the distance, sirens began to wail, getting closer. The Montana State Police responding to Tiny's 911 call. They'd arrived to find the situation already contained, Ray Dobson subdued, and a family saved. But as Bear stood there, watching Carol hold her children and seeing the fear slowly drain from their faces, he knew this was bigger than just tonight. The Montana State Police arrived 12 minutes after Bear's 911 call. 2 patrol cars with lights blazing and officers with hands on their weapons. What they found was not at all what they expected. Instead of chaos, they found order. Ray Dobson sat on the floor, hands zip-tied behind his back with restraints from Doc's first aid kit, Hammer standing guard over him. Carol Morrison sat on the couch wrapped in blankets, her children clutched close to her, and 6 bikers stood at attention like soldiers awaiting inspection. The lead officer, a woman in her 40s named Lieutenant Sarah Reeves, took in the scene with sharp, experienced eyes. She'd been a cop for 20 years and had seen every kind of domestic violence situation imaginable. But this was new. "Someone want to tell me what happened here?" Lieutenant Reeves asked, her hand still resting on her service weapon. Bear stepped forward, his movements calm and non-threatening. "Ma'am, my name is Thomas McAllister. We were stopping for gas at Red Rock Station when this boy," he gestured to Jake, "came running out of the woods begging us to save his family. He said his stepfather was threatening to kill his mother and baby sister. We called 911 immediately, but given the remote location and the immediacy of the threat, we made the decision to intervene." Lieutenant Reeves looked at Ray Dobson, who was now fully conscious and glaring at everyone with impotent rage. She saw the knife on the counter, saw Carol's injuries, saw the fear still written on the children's faces. She'd been a cop long enough to read a scene. "Mrs. Morrison," Lieutenant Reeves said gently, kneeling in front of Carol, "I need you to tell me what happened tonight. In your own words." And Carol's voice shook as she spoke, but she got through it. Ray coming home drunk, the escalating violence, him locking Jake outside, the knife at her throat. When she got to the part about Jake running for help and the bikers breaking in to save her, her voice broke completely. "They saved our lives," Carol whispered. "If they hadn't come when they did, Ray would have killed me. I know he would have. He said it. He said he was going to end it all tonight." Lieutenant Reeves stood and walked to Ray. "Mr. Dobson, you're under arrest for aggravated assault, domestic violence, child endangerment, and kidnapping. You have the right to remain silent." As she read Ray his rights and her partner cuffed him properly, Ray started screaming. "This is bullshit. She's my wife. Those kids are mine, and these bikers broke into my house. They assaulted me. I want them arrested." "Mr. Dobson," Lieutenant Reeves said coldly. You held a knife to your wife's throat in front of witnesses. You locked a 5-year-old child outside in freezing temperatures. And from what I can see, Mrs. Morrison has injuries consistent with ongoing abuse. The only person going to jail tonight is you. As the officers hauled Ray to the patrol car, still screaming threats and obscenities, Lieutenant Reeves turned back to the bikers. I'm going to need statements from all of you. And I have to be honest, technically you did break and enter. But given the circumstances and the fact that you likely saved lives tonight, I don't think the DA is going to press charges. Still, this needs to be documented properly. We understand, ma'am, Bear said. We'll cooperate fully. An ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. The paramedics examined Carol, Jake, and baby Rosie. Carol had bruised ribs, a mild concussion, and needed stitches for the cut on her throat. Jake's feet were badly cut and would need cleaning and bandaging. Rosie, miraculously, seemed physically unharmed, just terrified and exhausted. As the paramedics worked, Lieutenant Reeves pulled Bear aside. Mr. McAllister, can I speak with you privately? They stepped outside into the cold night air. Lieutenant Reeves studied Bear for a long moment. I checked your plates while my partner was securing the scene. You're the Thunder Ridge Riders. Vietnam vets, most of you. Yes, ma'am, Bear said. I've heard of your group. You do charity rides, veteran support, escort funeral processions. She paused. You're not the kind of MC that causes trouble. No, ma'am. We left that life behind a long time ago. We ride for brotherhood and to help where we can. Lieutenant Reeves nodded slowly. What you did tonight was risky. If Ray had actually cut Mrs. Morrison, if things had gone sideways, you all could be facing serious charges. But she looked back at the cabin, where Jake was being lifted into the ambulance, still clutching his mother's hand. That little boy is alive because you acted. His mother is alive because you didn't wait. Sometimes the law is too slow and good people have to step up. We did what anyone should have done, Bear said. But most people wouldn't have, Lieutenant Reeves countered. Most people would have called 911 and waited, and by the time we got here, it would have been a murder scene. She extended her hand. Thank you, Mr. McAllister. From one veteran to another. Thank you. Bear shook her hand, surprised to feel emotion tightening his throat. Just doing what's right, ma'am. The hospital in Whitefish, Montana was small but well equipped. By 2:30 a.m., Carol had been stitched up, Jake's feet had been bandaged, and Rosie had been examined and declared healthy despite her ordeal. The doctor wanted to keep them overnight for observation, standard procedure for domestic violence cases. The Thunder Ridge Riders sat in the waiting room, drinking terrible hospital coffee and giving their statements to a deputy who'd been sent to take down the details. They were exhausted. It had been a brutal 18-hour day that had turned into something none of them expected. You boys are free to go, the deputy said finally, closing his notebook. Lieutenant Reeves said she'll be in touch if she needs anything else, but honestly, you're heroes. The whole department is grateful. We're not heroes, Snake said quietly. We just did what needed doing. As the deputy left, a nurse approached. Mr. McAllister, Mrs. Morrison is asking for you. Bear followed the nurse to a private room where Carol lay in the hospital bed, looking small and fragile in the sterile white sheets. Jake was curled up beside her, finally asleep, his bandaged feet sticking out from under the blanket. Rosie slept in a hospital crib nearby. I wanted to thank you, Carol said softly, careful not to wake Jake. I don't have words big enough for what you did tonight. You saved my children. You saved me. Bear pulled up a chair and sat down, his big frame somehow gentle in the quiet room. Ma'am, you don't need to thank us. Your boy Jake, he's the real hero. That kid showed more courage than most grown men I know. Tears slid down Carol's cheeks. I failed them. I stayed with Ray too long. I let them see things no child should see. I thought I could manage it. Thought I could keep them safe while staying. But tonight, her voice broke. Tonight I nearly got us all killed. You didn't fail anyone, Bear said firmly. Abusers are expert manipulators. They make you think you can't leave, that you have nowhere to go, that it's your fault. But none of that is true. Ray made his choices, his violence, his threats. That's on him, not you. I have nothing, Carol whispered. No money, no job, no place to go. That cabin belonged to Ray. I have 2 children and nowhere to take them. Bear was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Carol, can I tell you something about me? She nodded, wiping her eyes. When I was 7 years old, Bear said, his voice low and rough with old pain. My father was a drunk, mean drunk, beat my mother regularly. One night it got real bad. He was going to kill her. I could see it in his eyes. I ran to the neighbor's house, begged them to call the police. They did, And the cops came, and they arrested my father. Carol's eyes widened. You went through this too? Yeah, Bear said. And I remember thinking I'd saved my mother. But 3 days later, she bailed him out, took him back, said she had nowhere else to go, no way to support us, and the beating started again within a week. He paused, his jaw tight. I was 15 when my mother finally died from her injuries. Fall down the stairs, the report said, but we all knew the truth. I'm so sorry, Carol breathed. I tell you this, Bear continued, because I don't want Jake to watch his mother die. I don't want him to grow up with that weight. You asked where you'll go, how you'll survive. The answer is, you'll have help. The Thunder Ridge Riders. We help veterans and their families. We have resources, connections, safe houses for women leaving dangerous situations. We'll make sure you and your children have somewhere safe to stay, that you get the support you need to start over. I can't ask you to do that, Carol said, fresh tears flowing. You've already done so much. You're not asking, Bear said. I'm offering. Because 30 years ago, I wish someone had offered this to my mother. Maybe she'd still be alive if they had. A knock on the door interrupted them. Doc stuck his head in. Bear, we got a problem. Bear stepped into the hallway. What kind of problem? I just got off the phone with Tiny. He's been making calls, checking on shelter availability. Every domestic violence shelter within 100 miles is full. There's literally nowhere to place Carol and the kids tonight except a motel, and that's not safe. Ray's brother lives in town, and if he gets out on bail, Bear's jaw set. Then she comes with us. To Murphy's Lodge? Doc raised an eyebrow. Bear, that's our clubhouse. It's also got 6 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and is guarded by 6 combat veterans. Ray Dobson or his brother even think about coming near that place, they'll regret it. We keep her and the kids there until we can arrange something more permanent. Doc studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're the president. If you say she stays, she stays. But Bear, this is going to be more than just a few days, you know that, right? Getting someone completely resituated, finding permanent housing, getting her on her feet, that's months of work. Then it's months of work, Bear said simply. We've got nothing but time, and she's got nothing but need. Seems like a fair trade to me. 3 months later, on a cold January afternoon, Bear stood on the porch of Murphy's Lodge watching Jake play in the snow with Tiny. The little boy was bundled up in a winter coat donated by a church in Whitefish, his feet now fully healed and warm in proper boots. His laughter echoed across the property, a sound that had been rare in those first weeks, but was becoming more common now. Inside the lodge, Carol was working at the kitchen table studying for her GED. She'd been taking online classes, determined to get her high school diploma so she could eventually go to community college. The Thunder Ridge Riders had set up a fund for her education, and 3 different churches in the area were helping with childcare. Rosie toddled around the living room, having just learned to walk, with Preacher following behind to make sure she didn't hurt herself. The old chaplain had become remarkably good at babysitting, much to everyone's amusement. Ray Dobson was in the county jail awaiting trial, held without bail due to the severity of the charges and his violent history. The prosecutor had told Carol she expected him to get at least 10 years, possibly more. Carol had filed for divorce, and with the help of a pro bono lawyer connected through the Riders, she was working on getting full custody and a permanent restraining order. But more than the legal victories, what struck Bear was the change in Carol herself. The beaten-down, terrified woman he'd met 3 months ago was slowly being replaced by someone stronger. She smiled now. She made plans for the future. She'd started talking about maybe becoming a counselor for other domestic violence survivors. You did good, old man, Snake said, joining Bear on the porch. He lit a cigarette, blowing smoke into the cold air. 3 months ago, if you'd told me we'd be running a halfway house for abuse survivors, I'd have called you crazy. Life's funny that way, Bear said. Got a call from Lieutenant Reeves, Snake continued. She wants to know if we'd be interested in working with the local DV task force. Apparently word got out about what we did, and other law enforcement agencies are interested in having us as a resource. Unofficial, of course. Can't have the cops officially partnering with a biker club, but as a community organization that they can work with. Bear considered this. What do you think? I think we spent most of our lives being the guys people cross the street to avoid, Snake said. Might be nice to spend the rest of it being the guys people run toward when they need help. Yeah, Bear agreed. Yeah, it might. Jake came running up to the porch, his cheeks red from the cold, and his eyes bright with excitement. Bear! Bear! Tiny said maybe in the spring I can ride on the back of a motorcycle. He said I'd need a special helmet, but he knows where to get one. Can I? Please. Bear knelt down to Jake's level. That's up to your mom, little man, but I think if she says yes, we can make that happen. Jake threw his arms around Bear's neck in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked the big man over. You're the best. You and all the guys. Mama says you're her guardian angels. We're just guys with motorcycles, Bear said, but his voice was rough with emotion. Nuh-uh, Jake said with the certainty only a 5-year-old could possess. Angels. Mama said so, and Mama doesn't lie. As Jake ran back to play with Tiny, Bear felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Purpose. Real purpose. Not the artificial brotherhood of violence and territory, but something genuine. Something that mattered. Carol appeared at the door, Rosie on her hip. Jake, 5 more minutes, then we need to come in for lunch, she called. Then she looked at Bear. Can I talk to you for a minute? They sat at the kitchen table, Rosie playing with blocks on the floor nearby. Carol looked nervous, twisting her hands together. I got a call from the housing authority, she said. They have an apartment available, 2 bedrooms in a safe neighborhood in Kalispell. It's income-based rent, and with the part-time job I just got at the library, I can afford it. We could move in next month. That's great news, Bear said, and he meant it. But there was something in Carol's expression that suggested she had more to say. The thing is, Carol continued, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm scared to leave. Not scared of Ray. He's in jail. And even when he gets out eventually, I'm not afraid anymore. But scared of losing this family you've built here. The safety, the support, the feeling that I'm not alone. What if I leave and can't handle it? What if I fail? Bear reached across the table and took her hand. Gentle, paternal, the way he wished someone had held his mother's hand all those years ago. Carol, you're not going to fail. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You survived years of abuse, you protected your children, you had the courage to start over from nothing. Moving into your own place isn't the end of this family, it's graduation. You're ready. But what if I need help? She whispered. Then you call, Bear said simply. You call, and we come. That's what family does. We're not going to disappear just because you don't live under this roof anymore. We'll be there for birthday parties and school plays and every time you need someone to watch the kids while you go to class. We're not going anywhere, Carol. You're stuck with us. Tears streamed down Carol's face, but she was smiling. How do I thank you? How do I ever repay what you've done? You already have, Bear said. You let us help. You let us be part of something good. After all the years we spent being something else, that's more valuable than you know. That evening, after Carol and the children had gone to bed, the Thunder Ridge Riders sat around the lodge's fireplace, drinking beer and talking quietly. They'd made a decision 3 months ago to help one desperate woman and her children. That decision had changed everything. Got another call today, Hammer said. Woman in Missoula trying to leave her abusive husband. Sheriff's department gave her our number. Asked if we could help her move her stuff out while he's at work, make sure he doesn't show up and cause trouble. We doing this now? Tiny asked, officially becoming some kind of rescue operation. Bear looked around at his brothers, men who'd been through wars and prisons and every hard thing life could throw at them. Men who'd found redemption in the brotherhood of the road. And now, maybe, they'd found something even better. Yeah, Bear said. Yeah, I think we are. We spent a lot of years being the kind of men people feared. Maybe it's time we became the kind of men people hope for. The Thunder Ridge Riders, Preacher said thoughtfully. Guardians of the innocent, protectors of the vulnerable, has a nice ring to it. Just means we gotta keep our bikes running and our phones charged, Snake said with a slight smile. Never know when some kid's gonna come running out of the woods needing heroes. They raised their beers in a silent toast, to Jake, who'd shown more courage than any of them, to Carol, who'd survived and was learning to thrive, and to the unexpected ways that broken people could save each other. Outside, snow began to fall softly over the Montana mountains, covering the world in peaceful white. And inside Murphy's lodge, a family slept safely, not the family any of them had been born into, but the family they'd chosen, the family they'd become, because sometimes the most unlikely heroes are the ones who've been down the darkest roads. They know what it's like to need saving, and they never forget how good it feels when someone shows up.